Welcome to the 3 Stoic Quotes of the Week with me, Sam, the Stoic Teacher. If this is your first time here, I'm a philosophy and theology graduate from the University of Cambridge, and I now have the pleasure of teaching philosophy and religious studies in South London. In the 3 Stoic Quotes of the Week, we look at ancient wisdom for modern times. Thank you for joining me.
Feel the hypocrisy, this is an aristocracy. I'm Socrates, but my skin more chocolatey. What's up, woo?
The first quote this week is from Epictetus and can be found in the Discourses, Book 1, Chapter 12. Now, I mentioned it in last week's video. This quote came to my mind when I was in IKEA, walking behind people, getting really frustrated because they were walking so slowly, and I just wanted to get one bin and get out of the place. And I remembered this quote from Epictetus because it really shouldn't have got me that worked up. Epictetus says, "When you are alone, you should call this condition tranquility and freedom. When you are with many, you shouldn't call it a crowd or trouble or uneasiness, but festival and company, and contentedly accept it." Now, for me, it applied to IKEA, but Epictetus used to talk about this in relation to, say, the Olympic Games. He would say you wouldn't go to the stadium and then be furious that someone's accidentally barged into you. This kind of thing has to be accepted in a kind of festival mindset. These accidents happen. And yet, sometimes when this perhaps happens in a different setting, we think to ourselves, oh my God, how dare this person accidentally barge into me, and then we let that disturb our tranquility. I had a similar situation where I was driving to work and a car cut me off in a way where I almost drove into the back of it, and I thought, my God, what's this person doing? And then when I went in and I spoke with a student, and I said he asked me how was my morning, and I said, well, actually, a driver, swerved in front of me. It was quite dangerous, and he just said, without thinking, he said, oh, they were probably late for work. And then in my head, this person that was somehow some kind of murderous villain trying to make me crash into the back of him, immediately I thought, well, actually, I've been late for work a few times, and I can understand if he was, perhaps he didn't see me and he was in a rush, and I didn't think about it again. And so that was some Stoic advice from my student. Matt Van Natter in the Good Fortune podcast makes a very similar point to my student. He says that when he goes to try and read in a busy setting, like say a bar, he says the word festival to himself. He literally says the word to remind himself of this quote. And he finds that immediately he's able to discover his tranquility and continue to read. So give that one a go the next time you have a chance. On to the second quote. Now, this quote comes from Seneca, and it's in his essay on anger. Seneca says, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Now, what does he mean by this? How many situations are there that could be improved by simply taking a moment to pause and reflect before responding? The Stoics offer a number of ways that this delay could be more constructive. There are 2 particular meditations that could be quite helpful. There's one called the view from above. So if you find yourself getting particularly angry over a situation, what you could do, according to the Stoics, is imagine yourself kind of sitting above your house, looking down at the situation that it is that you found yourself in, and just observe it as a neutral observer. Then imagine that you're sitting higher, able to view the whole street and the kind of issues that are going on for all the people on that particular street. Then imagine that you can view your entire city, and so on and so forth. Now, is it the case that you would be as angry once you have that wider context? Often the truth is no. The second form of meditation is called negative visualization or premeditating adversity. This idea is thinking about worst case scenarios in advance and getting yourself prepared for them. What this would do in terms of delaying anger is making you feel grateful for the things that it is that you do have, allowing you to practice gratitude. Things could be this way, but they're not, and therefore, rather than being angry about a particular situation, you might find yourself being grateful for it. I would recommend 2 meditation apps that have been really helpful. I would recommend the Stoa meditation app which can be found on the App Store or the Play Store. And for generic meditation, I found Headspace very, very helpful. Right, so on to the third quote. This quote comes to us from Marcus Aurelius, and it came to mind when I was talking to my GCSE students about crime and punishment and whether one could forgive. The quote that came to mind is the following: "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is from Marcus Aurelius. Now, this came to mind when talking to my students about the example of Abdul Munim Sombat Jitmud, who's a 66-year-old former school principal in the United States. His son, Salahuddin Jitmud, was tragically murdered at 22 years of age. Now, the reason Mr. Jitmud went viral is because he was actually filmed by the Washington Post hugging the killer of his son. Now, this person had, premeditated this attack with a group of friends and stalked and killed his son. And yet, Mr. Jitmud was able to forgive and to hug the man and tell him that he didn't blame him for what he had done. And it pans to the killer crying and saying, "I can't give that back to you." And this made the murderer feel much, much worse than, say, if Mr. Jitmud had shouted at him. The love and the forgiveness that was shown changed his mindset and made the killer feel worse than he would have than anything else. And so this has shown, that Mr. Jitmud, knowingly or unknowingly, has taken the best revenge possible by showing the killer that he's not like him, and showing him perhaps that there's a way for him to be better. Those were the 3 quotes for the week. I've been Sam, the Stoic Teacher. I'll see you next week for more ancient wisdom for modern times.
Kill the hypocrisy, this is an aristocracy. I'm Socrates, but my skin more chocolatey. What's up with who?